information of the general public, the hotlines have been activated, and the numbers are 800-0699 and 800-0700. I say again, 800-0699 and 800-0700. I want to state as well that all emergency vehicles are allowed and will be allowed passage during curfew hours. Ambulances in particular. I want to say again as well, people who are ill have to be taken to the hospital or nursing home in an emergency. Call your police station in your area. If for some reason you're unable to get to them, you are allowed to go to the nearest hospital or nursing home where you would like to go to. And along the way, if and when you are stopped, the instructions to the law enforcement officers, those instructions are to escort all sick people to hospitals. So I want to make that point particularly clear so that people who are ill and need emergency health care will not think that they cannot move to that location where that care is available. As in the other days of the state of emergency, multiple arrests were made, and I will ask the Commissioner of Police to deal with that. Thank you.
Again, through the state of emergency, we continue on with our apprehensions and arrests of those individuals that have been involved in gang-related activities. And as of today, we had, during the period 8 a.m. yesterday and 8 a.m. today, a total of 222 people arrested, 77 for gang-related occurrences, 6 related to homicides, 37 with regards to drug offenses, 21 individuals in breach of curfew, 70 serious offenses, and 10 people on outstanding warrants. As of today, our total number of people arrested is 684. Of those, 267 are gang-related. We continue on with our efforts. We have, as I mentioned in our past press briefings, seen a reduction in our serious crimes almost to nil. And of course, we have had only one homicide since the state of emergency, and that was in relation to a domestic occurrence, not gang-related. With that, I'll turn it over to Chief of the Defense Force, Brigadier General Mirage.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Over the last 24 hours, the units of the Army of the Defense Force conducted foot and mobile patrols, cordon and searches, stop and searches across 15 areas of operations throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Let me just mention that we are actually involved in 2 types of operations, the interagency operations and the independent military operations, so that a number of the results in terms of seizures and arrests that are accounted for by the police service would include those that are supported by the Defense Force in those interagency operations. In the last 24 hours, therefore, Those interagency operations to which I refer were conducted in Bangladesh, Arima, and Laventil. We did one independent major scale operation in the Betham Silas area over the last 24 hours. Across the wider national landscape in all of the operations that were conducted, we had 6 persons arrested in the southwest area, La Romaine and Oropouche, for assault and possession of narcotics. In terms of the operations of the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard, they continued to do deterrence operations in the northeastern sector and in the southwestern sector to prevent persons from leaving Trinidad illegally in light, of course, of the state of emergency and persons who may be criminals or maybe in targets of interest that we have. In addition to that, the Coast Guard supported the security arrangements for the Great Race that was conducted this morning to ensure that that was a success, even in light of the state of emergency. And that, ladies and gentlemen, completes our operations over the last 24 hours. Thank you.
Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a moving ticker tape as we give you these running ball-by-ball commentaries on a daily basis. But 684 persons arrested. I believe we're in day 6 or day 7 of the state of emergency. So therefore the state is moving at the rate of 100 plus per day, having gotten off to a slow start, as you may recall. That gives you an idea of the extent of criminals consistent with the extent of lawlessness that we had in the country. The country is breathing a sigh of relief, and we are seeing it, and we are getting the feedback in so many different areas. The hospitals, the casualty departments that used to be clogged with stab victims, road accident victims, the doctors and nurses are breathing a sigh of relief and reporting that they're having, for once, some peace and quiet at the casualty departments so they can actually tend to law-abiding citizens who may be ill, for a change. Not for a change because they neglected them in the initial stages, mind you. Of course, the police stations, quiet, a little calm, a little peace. This state of emergency has restored and brought about some measure of social equilibrium to the country. Even at a social and family level, it is strengthening the institution, the family institution. Wives are happier that their husbands are home, at least most of them. And the idea that a mother even said she's happy that her 2 boys are home to even spend time with her and to share a meal at the dinner table. In our country, it is the first time, in some cases, that families are sitting down at the dinner table together to have to share a meal. So, from many different perspectives, the state of emergency has yielded a lot of positives and very strong benefits. One person sent me a very interesting message to say that there's a Trinidadian who lives in Singapore. And he said, everyone who asks him when he comes back to Trinidad for a vacation, well, what about the chewing gum, boy? You might be missing a little chewing gum in Singapore. And he said his immediate response is, I have a wife and 2 children, and if I have to give up chewing gum in the streets of Singapore, but not have to worry about my daughter being raped or murdered, it's a small price to pay. And he was saying that in support of the state of emergency. And I share that story because for those who are inconvenienced and for those who are distressed, your anxiety and distress is noted and acknowledged. But we ask you to think about the greater good for all. It has been drawn to my attention that on Facebook, there are a number of videos and postings that border on incitement, using violent language, obscene language, and in some cases are abusive towards the security agencies and the efforts of the police. In one that has been sent, there's a young lady, couldn't be no more than 14 or 15 years of age, using profane and obscene language and expressing her thoughts in a most vulgar and obscene manner. That video has been passed on to the Commissioner of Police, and such action will not be tolerated. You have a right of freedom of expression, you have a right to legitimate disagreement, but you do not have a right to incite violence, and you do not have a right to use vulgar, obscene, and abusive language in such a manner. The Honorable Minister of National Security, who has been spearheading these efforts and under whose distinguished chairmanship and leadership we have been convening these daily meetings and briefings, mentioned the problem we're having with respect to curfew breakers. We have been trying to adopt a very mature, responsible, practical, and common sense approach to the whole question of the curfew, because we know who we are targeting, and it is the criminal elements. But thus far, it seems as if people are not taking it seriously, and in some cases, we feel as if some of those lawless elements seem to want to slip under the radar and under the police net. In light of those reports, I am giving consideration to amending the curfew orders to increase and introduce a stiffer penalty and fine for those who may wish to break the curfew and ignore the fact that we are in a state of emergency and seem to think they can take it for a joke. With respect to those in the citizenry and in the police service who seem unclear or unsure, we are having sometimes some mixed messages. We are, as of today, going to be developing and putting out newspaper and television ads to alert the public further and to explain further what are the powers during the state of emergency for the police officers so that people can know what their rights are. And vice versa, we'll say what the procedures and what the procedural safeguards and rights are for the citizenry. Ladies and gentlemen, rest assured, we are winning this war on crime. One sore area remains the curfew breakers. Another area remains the community-based intelligence that we are gathering. We are giving consideration to the question of setting up a virtual presence on the internet to make use of the growing Facebook phenomenon to access information that people may wish to share with us via the internet. So a virtual command center specific and dedicated to the state of emergency will be announced so that anyone wishing from the anonymous source of Facebook or email, whether it's a fake account even, to send us credible information that can be acted upon, that's fine. We will be happy to receive it and we'll be happy to act on it. Please do not misuse or abuse it to send us on wild goose chases, or else that would not be taken too kindly, and you may yourself be on the wrong side of the law. Wasteful employment of police time is still a criminal offense in this country. With respect to capacity, we have identified detention facilities and we are in the process of operationalizing and outfitting them and so on. That is being looked at. We have a dedicated task force. So the promise made by the Honorable Minister of National Security with respect to capacity, because you see the numbers are going up, that is a promise that we are keeping. Jail make to ripe fig, and for those who are intent on visiting the facilities, then rest assured we are making room and we are happy to receive you and accommodate you until you change your ways. For those who are assisting the criminals, whether it's grandma, grandpa, Aji, or Aja, if you know your grandson, your son, your daughter, or your granddaughter has been involved with the wrong crowd and has been involved in a life of crime, and you talk to them and you beg them, but they wouldn't change their way, or you suspect, but it's your own flesh and blood, your belly child, and you don't want to put them behind bars, if you know that they have visited you since the declaration of a state of emergency, and they have stashed anything on your premises, underneath the bed, outside in the back porch, in the ceiling, on top the roof, in the back, in the foul pen, please, now is the time to speak up, because as we intensify our efforts, having taken the gang leaders, gang members, and the violent elements off the street, we are now going to be casting our net further and farther. And if we find that you are in possession of illegal arms, ammunition, or any illegal substances or implements, you will also be guilty of breaking the law. You will also be the subject of a criminal charge now is not the time to join in criminal conspiracy with anyone who is related to you. Now is the time for the girlfriends, the grandmothers, the mothers, the stepfathers, everyone who feel that they could turn a blind eye if you knew or you ought to have known that what is stashed and you have your suspicions, rest assured that that will be a violation of the law. Come and give us the information. Take yourself out clear. Don't drink medicine for other people's fever, because when you're in jail, they might be watching and smiling on the outside, and trust me, they are coming to even bring so much as a cup of water for you in jail. So ladies and gentlemen, I make that appeal and end with complimenting and commending the disciplined, responsible, and mature efforts of those brave men and women from the Army, the Defense Force, and the police service who have been providing human service during this period of emergency. We know that you too have families. We know that you too have a life, but you have made a tremendous sacrifice for Trinidad and Tobago to be a safer, more secure, and better place for all of us. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we now invite your questions.
Hi, I'm Akil Simon, Trinidad Express newspaper. There's two questions for me. Mr. Ramlogan, you spoke about the persons making threats and so forth on Facebook. We understand that if there's a video in which threats were made to the life of the Prime Minister. Are you all aware of that? Is she aware of this? Has she expressed concern regarding this particular video?
I don't know whether the Prime Minister is aware of the video, but what I can say, I saw it on my Facebook wall. I've received a number of text messages and calls about it. It is a matter of grave concern, and I have instructed that that video be forwarded to the Commissioner of Police, and I've asked that he give it his immediate and urgent attention.
This could be for Mr. Gibbs as well, in locating these bad guys. We see many of them have been running since, the enforcement of the anti-gang laws. Is there any difficulty in locating these people? Yesterday we saw 3 of them dive into the sea in sea lots to escape the clutches of law enforcement officers.
Well,
it seems, I think that would be an apt description would be to say that those are big fish.
Definitely, as far as the people trying to escape the net, we know that if you're a bad guy, you're going to try to keep from getting caught, and so you're going to take whatever means you can to try to hide, to move into different areas. Certainly, we will continue to look at all areas through Trinidad and Tobago for you. We aren't narrow in our scope; we're broad in our scope. And we're trying to do it very strategically and systematically so that we don't have people escape the net at this point.
Roger Dworka from CNMGC News. If I might, Mr. Ramlogan, you talked about detention facilities. Could you elaborate a little bit more on what kind of facilities, where they are, and how many people you expect to hold there, and will they be patrolled by the police or the army? That's number one. And number two is the 2 men arrested at the Hyatt yesterday. Have they been charged yet?
I think these questions would be better, more appropriately answered by the Minister of National Security in the first instance, and perhaps the Commissioner of Police in the second instance. I will add a 2 cents worth at the end.
What was your first question?
First question about the detention facilities that you're constructing. What kind of facility is it? Where is it? And will they be patrolled by police or the army?
We are in the process now of identifying those areas. Well, more than identified, we've already identified those areas. I can tell you, for instance, one of them carries a capacity in excess of 1,000. I will not want to tell you where the facility is at present. And there is no way we will have a facility with inmates or arrested people and not have it secured.
What I meant was, is it police or army patrols that will be for these temporary prisons?
Both.
Really, with what was said by the Minister, as he indicated, There will be policing at these facilities, as well as our other law enforcement partners, such as the Defense Force, to look after it, to ensure the security on these facilities, as well as to ensure that the people that are housed and kept and detained in these areas will, be kept in a safe and secure manner.
Yes, and the question in relation to the Hyatt, has anyone been charged? The two men who were arrested yesterday at the Hyatt, as reported in this morning's newspapers?
Yes, they've been arrested and charged.
Can you tell us what they've been charged with, sir?
I don't have that information with me, no.
On the question of the detention centers, we have been, in fact, examining all the options. Brigadier Sandy indicated that we have identified a few. I just want to announce that I have asked the Minister of Housing to look into the question as in if the numbers continue to climb, to look and see whether or not the stadium in Tarouba. Notice I didn't name it because I do not wish to associate one of our icons and heroes with it. But I've asked him to examine whether or not the stadium in Tarouba can be utilized and be shifted from being a one-time tsunami shelter to a detention facility for the purpose of this state of emergency. And Dr. Moilal has promised to look into that and report back to the inter-ministerial committee within the coming days.
If I might, Mr. Ramilogan, is the state geared and ready to deal with the number of people that have been detained and projected to be detained within 2 weeks' time within a timely fashion? Or are we looking like probably by past December to deal with all these cases, given how the judiciary system is being, shall we say, revamped as it go along?
Well, as I mentioned before, one of the more important pieces of legislation on the agenda would be the abolition of preliminary inquiries. And that will free up the magistrate's time by almost, I would say about 65%. So without any addition of new magistrates, we will have 65% time being freed up. And I anticipate that they will, in fact, be able to deal with it. But be that as it may, if there is need for any kind of improvement in efficiency, we have been working with the Chief Justice to improve on a constant basis, on an ongoing basis, the administration of justice, and that those efforts shall continue with the utilization of video conferencing technology, with the utilization of CAT reporting and digital recording of evidence, and many other initiatives. But I'm not here to say that we are going to make life easy for anyone. The justice system will operate as it has always operated, with the efficiency that we can afford as a government, bearing in mind that we must secure and protect the fundamental rights of all, including prisoners.
Been detained thus far, and the review tribunal committee sets up the emergency powers. How many people have since then made a request? Because I know they can make a request through the tribunal to have their matter listened, to be reviewed and so on. How many people of that figure so far has made any kind of request?
Well, that's an interesting question, which gives me the opportunity to clarify something. The tribunal is an independent body, so we will not know how many people have tried to access it in any event. But be that as it may, the persons who are being arrested and charged, they are not people who will be able to access or petition the tribunal. The tribunals are persons who are detained under the emergency powers regulations during the state of emergency. These are persons who the police are picking up as part of the normal policing work during the state of emergency. The point is they are being actually charged for criminal offenses. The normal practice and procedure and the usual legal criminal justice system that has always operated, which we are familiar with, continues to operate during a state of emergency. So if a man murders someone, you don't put him before the tribunal and you don't detain him under the emergency powers regulations. You charge him for murder and he goes into jail if he's for robbery or anything else. So that I think it's a misconception that the 700 plus persons who may have been detained by now, that there will be this avalanche of petitions to the tribunal by 700 persons. That's not the case at all. The large majority, 90 to 95% of these persons, are being charged in accordance with the normal criminal procedure and practice, and they'll be placed before the courts.
Oh, how soon do you all anticipate the detention centers to be ready? Because there seems to be already a concern in the jails where we have received reports that the jail cells are packed to capacity, as to use some of your words, packed in like sardines. How soon do you all expect that, though? That these detention centers will be available to house the people that have since been detained since the state of emergency started?
To say that the jails are packed, that is not true. The Commissioner of Prisons have given us the assurance that he has adequate space as we speak, and we are now in the process of ensuring that other locations are made available and are prepared for other prisoners as the case may be.
Just one last question. I realize there's a kind of pattern emerging here where we see a lot of the seizures made, a lot of people arrested in specific areas. Now, in the West, there are a number of areas that fall under the hotspots, including West Morings. Now, there was a drug bust outside West Morings, but we have seen, like last year when there was in Valsane, there was this huge gun seizure and drugs and so on. How haven't you all gone into these areas where there's supposedly underground rave parties with illegal drugs taking place at certain times? Have you all received any kind of credible information in these areas, these affluent areas, where there is also a high degree of criminal activity taking place subterranean?
Before the AG answers that, I'd like to put to you that if it is that you know of these areas, are you withholding information?
I think we've answered this before, this question that people seem to want us to go into certain areas because on the basis that they're affluent. That is not the basis on which you go into areas. You go into areas based on credible intelligence and to seek out evidence that can be admissible in a court of law and can stand up in a court of law. I do not wish to associate myself with the continuing push for the perception, to perpetuate the perception that these communities, because they are affluent, it necessarily means that they are involved in criminal activity. What I can tell you is that there is equality before the law and equality of treatment for all citizens, regardless of where they live. And if anyone has information or intelligence about illegal activities taking place, whether it is Goodwood Park, whether it is Pinal, whether it is Cuchawan Trace, whether it is Port of Spain or Laventille, it really does not matter, and we really do not care. Breaking the law is breaking the law by anyone, everyone, everywhere, anytime. And we will act with the same degree of fortitude and strength and resolve. Now, you mentioned rave parties taking place and drugs being peddled. If you have, Brigadier Sandy is correct, if you have information about that, the media has an obligation and